Today we're making an all butter pie crust using 5 different methods, and this next method is with the pastry blender, which is this tool. I have pastry flour in my bowl, and I'm going to add a little bit of sugar for caramelization and a little bit of salt for flavor, and then we'll just kind of mix those together. You can use the pastry blender. There's no need to get another tool dirty or anything like that. And next we're going to add our butter, which I've cubed into 1 centimeter or approximate pieces. And then just break it up as you put it in the bowl. Don't touch it too much or it'll get too warm. Next, we are just going to cut in our butter by pressing down into the flour like this until we have all pea-sized pieces or a little bit smaller. The purpose of cutting in the butter into the flour is to coat the gluten strands and to shorten them. And gluten is 2 proteins in flour that when they're hydrated and kind of agitated and worked, they become kind of a felt-like structure, which is the support and the structure behind the pie crust. So you definitely want some gluten formation because you want your pie filling to stay in your pie, but you don't necessarily want too much or it'll become elastic and it'll shrink. So as you can see, I'm just kind of turning my bowl as I am pushing down in kind of a little bit of a rocking motion. This is one of the most efficient ways to do it by hand. You can see this one's a bit larger than a pea, so we want to just cut it in just a little bit more. So you want to make sure that you don't overcut in your butter. So you want to make sure you cut in enough to coat some of those gluten strands, but you also want to make sure that you leave some larger pieces so that you get that nice flaky crust, which is the whole point. So in my bowl, you can see that I've got some larger pieces. I've got this one. It's about the size of a pea, honestly. These are both the size of a pea. They could have been in the same pod. So cute. That's where we're gonna stop. So the next step is adding ice water. So we're gonna add the water about a tablespoon at a time. And then, if I were properly prepared, we're gonna toss it with a fork. You want to be gentle with your pastry because of the gluten. You're trying to coat the flour evenly, and we want it to come into kind of a shaggy mass. Keep tossing. I turn the bowl when I'm working with a bowl. You might as well help yourself out a little bit. So a little bit more here. It's getting closer. There's still lots of flour here. It's starting to kind of clump together, which is great, and I'm getting excited about that. But we still need a little bit more water. So I'm gonna keep adding about a tablespoon at a time. So here you can see that it's getting a bit more shaggy. You see how there's like shards of pastry. At this point, I'm gonna dump it out. You can make this whole thing in the bowl, but you have a tendency to add a little bit too much water if you do that. Now we can stop using the fork because we have hands. I'm gonna be very careful at this point how much water I add. This is that crucial point when you're making pastry where it seems like you need to add so much more water to get it to come together, but really you don't. So what I'm doing here is it's called fraisage. It's a French technique. Gathering it into a ball and pushing it with the heel of your hand. At this point, I'm just going to add a little bit more water on my hand. You can see that this is shaggy. You see how that there's like layers in here? This is great. This is beautiful. Just a little bit more water to get all of this up. Oh, they're so pretty. Now you want to make sure that you work this just until it comes together. Otherwise, you're going to have a tough pastry that's going to shrink because it's going to be so elastic because the gluten formation is in there. Okay, we are actually here. I'm gonna grab my bench scraper, just cut it in half. You can cut it with a knife, or you can tear it. And then I'm gonna take each half and I'm gonna work it into a nice little disc, which is gonna make it a lot easier for us to roll it out. And the next step of this pastry recipe is to chill it. So you need to chill this dough for at least 2 hours in order to allow the water to redistribute and also for the gluten to relax, and also the butter will re-solidify, and so that way you get those nice flaky layers that you want. And that was the pastry blender method for making pie crust.